4:12 a.m. Spring Valley, Nevada. The street was dark and quiet. No foot traffic, no sound from the Strip, 11 miles northeast. Just desert wind through landscaping and the green blink of a Ring doorbell above a brass number on a beige stucco rental. A pool service van sat at the curb. Its logo, a stylized wave above a company name, belonged to a business the Nevada Secretary of State had dissolved 14 months prior. 8 members of the United States Marshals Regional Fugitive Task Force stood in a 3-point stack on the front landing. 6 more had already moved through the service alley to the garage bay at the rear. Behind them, 2 vehicles sat dark and unlit on the cross street, engines cold. No radio traffic. The breach order had gone out 90 seconds earlier in a single encrypted burst, transmitted simultaneously to 22 agents across 2 Nevada counties. At 4:12 and 14 seconds, the ram connected. The door came in on the first strike. The task force had been looking for one man. A California gang shot caller named in a federal warrant out of Boston, last confirmed in the Inland Empire 12 days before the January raid. Now cornered, if the intelligence held, inside a 3-bedroom rental that looked identical to every other house on the block. What they found inside would take 85 days of coordinated work and 3 federal districts to fully explain. The short version, 14 young women, ages 22 to 26, recovered from a windowless room behind a false wall at the back of a laundry closet. Women reported missing from Central Valley towns between 45 and 120 days earlier, transferred directly to hospital care. The longer version begins 8.5 weeks prior, in Dorchester, Massachusetts. It doesn't start with a fugitive hunt. It starts with a mass shooting on a residential block, and with an analyst in Boston who noticed something that had nothing to do with the task she had been assigned. October 23, 2025. Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester. 11:47 p.m. 5 people were shot on a residential block in the span of 4 seconds. 2 died at the scene. The shooting was brazen enough to draw state police, Boston PD, and a federal fugitive task force response within the same 72-hour window. Surveillance footage was available from 4 street cameras. 41 shell casings were recovered from the pavement. 1 partial print was lifted from the door panel of a parked vehicle on the far side of the block. The print matched a federal database record, tied to a man with an outstanding warrant out of the Eastern District of California. The warrant was 2 years old, never served. His documented profile placed him in a California street gang network with known operations in the Central Valley. Federal intelligence summaries flagged a pattern. He moved west when federal pressure increased in the east. He had last been confirmed in Riverside County in August 2025. After that, nothing. He had gone quiet. The Blue Hill Avenue shooting gave the U.S. Marshals a new anchor point. He had been in Dorchester. The print confirmed it. If his pattern held, he was already moving west. What the task force did not know yet was that he had not moved alone, and that what he was moving west to manage was not a fugitive hideout. It was an operation. The Interstate 15 corridor between Riverside County, California, and the southern Nevada state line is approximately 140 miles of federally monitored desert highway. It carries legal commercial traffic, recreational vehicles, and roughly 40,000 vehicles per day in both directions. It also carries, according to Regional Fugitive Task Force intelligence since 2023, a secondary stream of organized logistics. Human assets and related materials moving in and out of the Las Vegas metro area through a series of rotating short-term residential nodes. The shot caller's network had been using this corridor for at least 14 months, according to the subsequent federal assessment. Not with obvious criminal logistics. No cargo trucks, no commercial activity. With rentals. Suburban 3- and 4-bedroom units in cluster housing around Las Vegas's southern edge, Spring Valley, Henderson, the northwest corridor of North Las Vegas. Each unit rotated every 6 to 8 weeks. Utilities registered in third-party names. Subscription deliveries established to create a pattern of ordinary occupancy. A Ring doorbell as both security and social camouflage, a device that signals, to any neighbor who notices, that a responsible tenant lives here and has nothing to hide. The Spring Valley property had been rented under the name of a Nevada LLC, incorporated in November 2024. The LLC listed one manager. That manager had no verifiable residential address in the state and had filed no business activity with the Secretary of State in the 14 months the entity had been active. The house appeared on a short-term rental platform as suitable for extended stays. 3 bedrooms, a shared pool, a 2-car garage. The listing made no mention of a secondary interior room with no windows and a pivoting false wall at the back of the laundry closet. The anomaly that cracked the network open did not come from surveillance cameras or undercover contacts or intercepted communications. It came from a logistics analyst at the Marshals Boston field unit who was working an associate file. She was specifically reviewing purchase and shipping records obtained under legal process from a major appliance retailer. She was tracing delivery addresses connected to known associates of the shot caller's network in the Northeast. She was not looking for anything in Nevada. She was looking for patterns in delivery data. And she found one. The Spring Valley address had received 2 deliveries of the same LG washer-dryer combination unit, 6 weeks apart. The first unit had gone to the front laundry room, consistent with the rental's listed amenities. The second unit, 6 weeks later, had been routed to the rear of the primary hallway. On the publicly available floor plan for the property, that location was a solid interior wall. There was no laundry hookup there. There was no room there. On paper, that second appliance had been delivered to a wall. She flagged it at 11:49 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November 2025. A supervisor reviewed it at 12:22 a.m. By 2:15 a.m., the Spring Valley address had been cross-referenced against the Regional Fugitive Task Force's Nevada intelligence files and added to an active watch list. By 3:02 a.m., the Southern District of Nevada component had confirmed. They were highly confident this was the right location. One detail kept nagging at me when I worked through the investigative timeline on this case. The analyst who flagged the delivery anomaly was not assigned to the Nevada thread. She was working Boston-side associate files. She found the Spring Valley address because she was thorough, not because anyone directed her to look there. That is not a systemic solution. That is one person's judgment at 11:49 p.m. on a task nobody asked her to perform 6 weeks after the data entered the system. The 85-day clock had been running since October, and the clock inside the Spring Valley house had been running longer than that. The watch on the Spring Valley property began December 2, 2025. 48 hours after the anomaly flag. Physical surveillance from the Boston unit's distance was not feasible, so the task force activated its Nevada regional partners. 6 agents from the Southern District Task Force component, joined by 2 DSS liaison officers, tracking a parallel financial thread connected to the LLC's incorporation. For 8 days, the property showed nothing. The van stayed parked. Interior lights cycled on a schedule that could have been automated. No confirmed movement in or out through the front. On the 9th day, a second vehicle appeared in the service alley. A black Cadillac sedan, registered to a rental company in Barstow, California. The rental agreement, obtained under emergency legal process, listed a pickup on November 28th and a scheduled return on December 10th. That return date had not been honored. The vehicle had been driven off terms and not returned. DSS ran the GPS telematics ping from the rental company's fleet system. The route showed Barstow, north on the 15 to Baker, Nevada, then west to Las Vegas. Same route, same time frame, as the movement pattern the task force had been building on the shot caller since the Dorchester shooting. The Cadillac was the thread they needed. And then the thread developed a problem. On December 10th, 3 days into active physical surveillance of the property, a second GPS ping on the Cadillac showed the vehicle had moved at 1:47 a.m. Not off the property. Around the block twice and back to the alley, parked in exactly the same position. A counter-surveillance loop. Standard practice for a subject who suspected he was being watched. The Nevada team pulled their physical assets back that night. 12 hours of surveillance access lost. The decision was made at the field level. If the shot caller had detected a physical presence near the property, pressing harder would risk compromising the entire operation. Lose him from Spring Valley, and 85 days of accumulated intelligence would go with him. What replaced the physical surveillance was a grid of mobile DSS pings, coordinated with the cellular carrier serving the Spring Valley sector. Not real-time tracking, a 12-hour lag on confirmed device signatures, but enough to maintain a thread without a visible presence near the address. The shot caller's encrypted burner, a device type flagged in the original Eastern District warrant, had been cloned once before, in Barstow, during a brief window of physical access to a vehicle connected to his network. That cloned signature gave the task force a reference point. When it appeared on the Spring Valley grid at consistent intervals, the working hypothesis solidified into near certainty. He was inside. What the grid also showed, and what the task force had not anticipated, was a cluster of secondary device signatures. Multiple phones active inside the property simultaneously, running cycles inconsistent with normal residential occupancy. Not one resident's usage pattern. Not two. A cluster. Distinct. Consistent. Operating on a rotation that looked managed rather than spontaneous. The task force brought in a specialist from the Marshals Intelligence Division in Washington. She reviewed the device data over 4 days and produced a 12-page memo. In the measured language of federal intelligence assessments, she described the signature pattern as consistent with a confined population, maintained in a supervised environment within the structure. What's most surprising about this case is not the sophistication of the counter-surveillance operation, or even the size of the network that emerged from the breach. It's what the device data revealed when investigators pulled the carrier records retroactively. The same cluster of secondary signatures at the Spring Valley address went back to September 14, 2025. 6 weeks before the Blue Hill Avenue shooting. The operation had been running in that house for more than 3 months before the task force knew the house existed. By December 17th, the task force had enough for a multi-district brief. The lead case agent flew to Boston on the 18th. A joint call with the Eastern District of California was convened on the 20th. What emerged from that call expanded the scope of the entire operation. Spring Valley was not the only node. The shot caller was the operational link in a 3-district network. Above him in the chain was a senior coordinator believed to be managing multi-district logistics from a second location. A garage unit in a light industrial compound off North Rancho Drive in North Las Vegas. The North Las Vegas location had been leased for 7 months, under a name that matched no individual in any state or federal database. Utility usage at the address showed an electrical load consistent with modified HVAC and server-grade equipment. The kind of draw you get from a sealed space being maintained at controlled temperature or from communication infrastructure running continuously. Federal investigators had hypotheses about what was inside. None of them were correct. The correct answer did not emerge until the night of the raid. The task force now had 2 targets. They had device confirmation of the shot caller at Target 1. They had an unidentified coordinator at Target 2. What they did not have was a confirmed count of the secondary population inside the Spring Valley property. Whether the device signatures represented people held inside the house, or a different configuration entirely. That uncertainty was about to force the hardest operational decision of the 85-day investigation. Here's what this tells us about how operations like this sustain themselves under federal pressure. The shot caller was not hiding in the way a fugitive hides. Off the grid, in constant motion, difficult to locate. He was working. He had been in Spring Valley for the better part of 3 months, running an active operation, counter-surveilling his neighborhood, and rotating resources through a property that looked, from the street, indistinguishable from every other rental on the block. The sophistication was not technical. It was social. The house looked normal. The van looked like a service vehicle. The Ring doorbell looked like a security feature. That was sufficient to remain invisible for 14 months. The decision to proceed required HRT deployment. The hostage rescue team was activated December 22nd on the task force's formal request. HRT needed 7 days to pre-position in the Las Vegas sector and conduct structural reconnaissance of both targets. The Spring Valley property was surveilled over a 48-hour window in early January by a 2-person team posing as utility contractors. The reconnaissance confirmed one detail that changed the breach plan entirely: a second reinforced interior door, off the main hallway, not present on any available floor plan of the property. The door was padlocked. Commercial-grade hardware. The kind used on storage units. The breach plan was revised on January 7th. Primary entry team on the front door, securing the common areas. Secondary pair moving immediately to the reinforced door with a Halligan bar if the padlock did not yield. Third pair covering the back corridor. Total sequenced entry from first RAM contact to full interior control planned to run under 45 seconds. The secondary team at North Las Vegas would initiate at the same 4:12 mark. Same encrypted burst. No lag between targets. No lag. Because if the coordinator at Target 2 received any signal of a breach at Target 1, he would move. Put yourself in the lead case agent's position at 4 a.m. on January 9th, the night before the breach. You have an 85-day investigation that has led to a positive location. You have a secondary target with an unknown interior. You have device signatures consistent with a confined population inside a house with a padlocked interior door you did not know existed until 10 days ago. You have one operational window before the shot caller's counter-surveillance cycle would rotate him out of the address again. You can go tomorrow. Or you can keep watching and risk losing him. He signed the authorization at 4:31 a.m., January 10th, 2026. 4:12 a.m. Spring Valley, Nevada. The RAM connected. The door came in on the first strike. The front of the house cleared in 11 seconds. Living area, main bedroom, first bathroom, empty. A flat-screen television on standby. A half-eaten meal on the kitchen counter. A coffee pot, still warm. The domestic debris of a space that had been occupied within the last 2 hours. An agent in the main hallway called, "Contact rear." Not a person. The reinforced interior door. The secondary pair moved to it in 4 seconds. The padlock, a commercial-grade unit, heavy shackle, did not yield on the first approach. The Halligan bar went in on the second strike. The padlock sheared at the hasp. The door opened inward. Behind it, a laundry closet. Approximately 8 feet by 12. Standard residential laundry setup on the left side. Washer, dryer, utility shelving. On the right side, a wall. Drywall, painted beige, matching the surrounding interior exactly. Same texture. Same baseboard. Nothing on it. No hardware. No markings. The room was deeper than the floor plan allowed. The secondary pair's team lead noted it immediately. He put his palm flat against the right side wall and pushed. The wall moved. The false panel was a single drywall sheet mounted on a concealed pivot frame, the same construction method used in home theater installations, adapted here for a different purpose. It required lateral pressure to release, not forward force. From inside the laundry closet, you would not know it was there unless you were looking for it, or unless you knew the room was 3 feet deeper than it should be. He pushed it open. A room. 12 feet by 16. No windows. A wall calendar on the far side, the month of May still displayed. A date in the 3rd week circled in blue ink. On the floor along the right wall, 14 plastic water bottles lined up in a single row, evenly spaced. Like tally marks on a surface, someone had run out of room to mark. 14 young women, ages 22 to 26. The lead agent later documented that the first thing he registered was the light. Warm light from a single ceiling fixture, not the harsh institutional brightness he had expected. The second thing was the quiet, not silence. A particular kind of quiet. The kind that comes from people who have learned not to make sound. All 14 were transported directly to hospital care. The task force's medical liaison, a trauma-trained federal officer pre-positioned at Desert Springs Medical Center, received the first transport within 22 minutes of the breach. The women ranged in age from 22 to 26. They had been reported missing from Central Valley communities, Fresno, Tulare, Visalia, Porterville, one from Bakersfield. Missing persons reports filed between 45 and 120 days before the January raid. Families notified by federal victim specialists within 4 hours of transport confirmation. The condition of the room was documented over a 6-hour evidence process following the breach. The false wall's pivot mechanism was photographed and cataloged. The water bottles were counted and individually tagged. 14. The calendar on the far wall was removed as evidence. Later, forensic analysis determined that the circled date in May corresponded to the date the LLC holding the rental agreement had been incorporated. Whether that was deliberate or coincidence was never conclusively established by the task force's documentation. One detail that stuck with me, reading through the breach report, the water bottles. 14 of them. 1 for each person. Lined up individually along the wall, not stacked, not grouped, each placed separately. The kind of precision that speaks to an established routine, to an operation that had been running long enough to develop habits around maintaining the people it was holding. There is also a line in the task force's breach report that reads almost like fiction. Under the heading Room Configuration, Secondary Interior, the documentation notes a single wooden folding chair positioned in the center of the room, facing the false wall. Nothing else. No other furnishings. No other fixtures. The chair was cataloged under its own evidence number. The report offers no interpretation. That is not the task force's job. But it is difficult to read that entry and not understand exactly what it describes. The shot caller was not in the room. He was found in the master bedroom closet, behind a clothing rack, holding a cellular device. Not the encrypted burner flagged in the original warrant, but a second prepaid unit, powered on approximately 6 minutes before the breach. The device contained encrypted messaging application data and a partial contact list with numbers traced to activity in 2 additional states. He was taken into custody without resistance. Federal charges were filed within 48 hours in the Eastern District of California. Companion proceedings were initiated in the District of Massachusetts, linked to the Blue Hill Avenue shooting investigation. A third thread was being assembled in the District of Nevada. 3 districts. 1 operation. The North Las Vegas garage, hit simultaneously at 4:12 a.m., was a different scene. The secondary team breached the bay on the first approach. The interior was configured as a communications and logistics hub. 3 folding tables with multiple cellular and satellite devices, a portable power unit, and approximately $40,000 in vacuum-sealed currency in a rolling duffel near the rear wall. 1 individual was taken into custody, an associate of the shot caller not previously identified in any task force intelligence file. His role in the network structure became clearer over the following weeks as federal investigators worked through the seized devices. What the North Las Vegas garage did not contain: the senior coordinator. The individual the task force believed had been managing multi-district logistics from that location was not there. He had not been there for at least 72 hours before the raid, based on retroactively pulled utility and carrier data. He had moved. The task force did not know where. Here's the take that will probably draw some pushback. The decision to hold the operation for 8 days, from December 21st to January 10th, was operationally defensible, given the HRT deployment requirements and the simultaneous 2-target structure. The field commander made the call available to him with the intelligence he had. But retroactive carrier data shows the senior coordinator's device signatures leaving the North Las Vegas grid on January 6th, 4 days before the breach. 82 days of accumulated intelligence built the case. 3 additional days of preparation gave the architect of the network a window to clear the city. The task force breached Spring Valley and found 14 women and the shot caller. They did not get the person who designed and built the infrastructure those women were held in. That trade is not comfortable to sit with in the cold light of a post-operation assessment. Did the system fail these women by taking 8 additional days once the go call was in reach? Or was the risk of losing the entire operation a reasonable justification for the delay? That is not a rhetorical question. It says something concrete about how you think federal law enforcement should weigh certainty against speed when lives are directly involved. The post-operation assessment produced several unresolved threads. 3 of the 14 women recovered from Spring Valley had been reported missing within the 2 weeks immediately before the January raid. This suggested they had been moved to the Spring Valley location more recently than the others, possibly transferred from a prior node the task force had not identified. Physical evidence from the Spring Valley property was matched by forensic technicians to a second location, through a detail the task force has not publicly disclosed. That second location remains unidentified. 2 institutional gaps flagged in the post-operation review sit entirely outside the task force's remit. The short-term rental platform's internal anomaly algorithm had flagged the Spring Valley address on October 30th, 2025. 6 weeks before the Marshals logistics analyst independently flagged the same address from appliance delivery data. The platform's flag documented an unusual pattern of accelerated booking terminations at the same address across a 12-week window. That flag was not passed to law enforcement. The platform's terms of service did not require it. The LLC's registered agent, a commercial service company processing hundreds of similar registrations per year, had filed 3 other entity registrations in the same calendar year that were subsequently flagged in separate, unrelated federal investigations. Those flags existed in different database systems. None were connected to each other prior to the task force's independent investigation of the Spring Valley address. These are not individual failures. They are structural gaps. Databases that do not communicate. Algorithms that generate anomaly flags with no mandatory reporting pathway. Data points that exist in isolation until one person, working a task she was not assigned, at 11:49 p.m., connects them by hand. Most people assume investigations like this get broken by informants, by tips, by a cooperating witness who decides the risk of staying silent exceeds the risk of talking. The evidence in this case tells a different story. Nobody talked. The shot caller had counter-surveillance discipline sufficient to detect a physical presence in his neighborhood. The LLC had no public face. The network's internal communications ran through encrypted channels. The operation was found because one analyst noticed that the same appliance had been delivered twice to a wall that should not have existed on any floor plan of the address. And it was found 67 days after the data that could have found it first appeared in accessible records. The September 14th device signatures on the Spring Valley carrier grid. 67 days. That is the number in this case that stays with you. Not 14. Not 85. 67 days the operation ran, while the evidence of its existence sat in carrier databases, with no mechanism to surface it. The associate taken into custody at the North Las Vegas garage entered cooperation discussions with federal prosecutors within 6 weeks of his arrest. The terms of that cooperation, what information was provided, what charges were adjusted in exchange, have not been disclosed in any publicly available court filing. The Glock recovered at the Spring Valley address, the weapon traced to a Roxbury pawn shop and flagged in the Blue Hill Avenue investigation, was matched by ATF ballistic analysts to shell casings recovered at a second federal crime scene in the Central Valley in August 2025, 2 months before the Dorchester shooting. The weapon's movement history, from a Massachusetts pawn shop to a California crime scene to a Nevada rental, is being reconstructed through federal ballistic tracing. The results of that reconstruction have not been publicly disclosed. The Blue Hill Avenue shooting, the 2 people who died in Dorchester on October 23, 2025, remains an open investigation. The task force's working assessment is that the shooter and the shot caller are different individuals. The person who fired on Blue Hill Avenue that night is not the man in federal custody in Nevada. That investigation continues across Boston PD, State Police, and the Marshals Boston component. No charges related to the shooting itself have been announced. 3 additional individuals have been identified as arrest targets in connection with the broader network, in proceedings not yet publicly announced as of this account. 2 are believed to be in the United States. 1 is believed to be in Mexico. Will the senior coordinator in Sonora be extradited and federally prosecuted in the next 2 years? Comment yes or no. If you have followed federal fugitive cases that cross the southern border out of Nevada and California, you already have a sense of how these threads tend to resolve. The answer is almost never what the initial press release implies. The Spring Valley property was released from evidence hold and returned to the rental platform's active inventory in mid-February 2026. The false wall had been removed. The padlocked interior door was gone. The LG washer-dryer unit, the second one, the one used as a structural framing element for the pivot wall's housing, was removed as evidence. The first unit remained in the front laundry room. The Ring doorbell above the doorframe is still there. Its green light still blinks. The 14 women recovered from the property received treatment, and were transferred to support services coordinated through the Justice Department's Victim Assistance Program. Their names have not been publicly released. The task force's Victim Services Coordinator confirmed that all 14 had been contacted by family members within 24 hours of the notification. The families had been waiting between 45 and 120 days. A federal prosecutor involved in the Boston component of the case described the Blue Hill Avenue shooting as the event that made an invisible operation visible. Without the shooting, the shot caller does not surface on the task force's radar. Without the radar flag, the logistics analyst in Boston is not assigned to the associate file. Without the associate file, she is not reviewing appliance delivery records at 11:49 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November. Without those delivery records, the second LG washer-dryer is never flagged. Without the flag, the pivot wall at the back of the Spring Valley laundry closet remains exactly where it is, doing exactly what it was designed to do. A street shooting in Dorchester led, 85 days later, to a false wall in Spring Valley. That is the chain. One link removed and it does not hold. The network's infrastructure, the rotating rental nodes, the I-15 corridor logistics, the LLC registration shell, the counter-surveillance protocols sophisticated enough to burn a physical surveillance team in under 2 weeks, is documented in the task force's post-operation assessment, shared in interagency briefings across 3 federal districts and 2 countries. The methodology for remaining invisible inside the short-term rental economy of a major American city is not proprietary to this network. It is replicable with modest resources and basic operational discipline. The shot caller is in federal custody. The network's senior coordinator is in Sonora. The prior node from which 3 of the 14 women were likely transferred in the weeks before the raid has not been identified. The next address on the rotation has not been